The aftermath of the Korean War. Previously, we talked about the causes of the Korean War. Today, we will talk about who won the war. To answer this question, we need to know the original goals of the participating parties. When the war began, the goal of North Korea was to conquer South Korea, but North Korea failed. Therefore, North Korea lost because it did not achieve its goals. The goal of South Korea was to stop North Korea. When the war began, the South Korean army suffered a terrible defeat. However, with the help of the United Nations troops, South Korea successfully resisted the North Korean invasion. Therefore, from this perspective, South Korea has succeeded. But in general, South Korea did not lose its war, but it did not win it either. The original goal of the United States and the United Nations was to protect South Korea. With this goal achieved, one could say that United States and the United Nations have won this war. However, around October 1st, 1950, MacArthur changed the goal of the war from protecting South Korea to conquering North Korea. With this goal not achieved, so the United States and the United Nations failed from this perspective. In October 1950, China intervened. China's goal is to prevent North Korea from being conquered by the UN forces. Judging from the results, China has achieved this goal. Therefore, China won. If the victory is based on enhancement of the war status, then China won. China has proved that its military is comparable to the American military. If the victory is based on the number of deaths, then the UN forces won because they lost fewer soldiers. If victory is based on acquired territory, then the war is a tie, because neither side has acquired any territory from the other. The aftermath of the Korean War set the tone for the Cold War tension between all the superpowers. The Korean War was important in the development of the Cold War, as it showed that the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, could fight a limited war in a third country. The limited war or proxy war strategy was a feature of conflicts such as the Vietnam War and the Soviet War in Afghanistan, as well as Angola, Greece, and wars in the Middle East. Let's look at the post-war impact on each country. For the US, the Defense Department estimated that the United States spent $15 billion, equivalent to $143 billion in 2019, on the Korean War. The American defense budget had nearly quadrupled during this period. Casualties in the war are fewer than in the Vietnam War, but they occurred over 3 years as opposed to 15 years in Vietnam. Korea did not have a single material resource that would have benefited America. The US managed to prevent South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan from falling into communist hands. The US still maintains a heavy military presence in Korea, as part of the effort to uphold the Korean armistice agreement. In 2013, President Obama gave a speech commemorating the 60th anniversary of the truce that effectively ended the war. He declared that the Korean War was not a tie as some history books teach, but a clear victory for the Americans who fought it. As Obama noted, since the war ended, South Korea has become one of the world's largest economies and continues to be a key American ally. For Korea, the war devastated both North and South Korea. Both fronts suffered major damage to their economies and infrastructure. Each of the North and South Korea had about 1 million soldiers' casualties. The number of civilian casualties was twice that of the military. Until the 1970s, both North and South Korea were among the poorest countries in the world. In the aftermath of the war, the United States funneled significantly aid to the South Korea. In the meantime, North Korean reconstruction was assisted by the Soviet Union and China. In the years immediately following the war, North Korea's growth rate of total industrial output exceeded that of the South Korea, averaging 39% between 1953 and 1960. Today, South Korea operates one of the world's most advanced economies, while to the north, its neighbor is a military dictatorship that keeps a tight fist on the economy. For China, the impact of the Korean War on China may exceed everybody's imagination. Firstly, it is related to Taiwan. Before the outbreak of the Korean War, the Communist China's primary task had always been a civil war against the Republic of China, which retreated to Taiwan. However, when the Korean War broke out on June 25, 1950, the United States obviously did not want to see the same thing happen in China. So 2 days later, On June 27th, the President Truman sent American warships to the Taiwan Strait. China's attempt to conquer Taiwan could not continue since then till today. Secondly, perhaps even fewer people noticed that in August 1950, just after the outbreak of the Korean War, before China sent troops to Korea, a special POW of World War II had transferred from the Soviet Union to China. This guy is Pu Yi, the last emperor of China. Pu Yi was the last emperor of the Qing dynasty in China. During World War II, with the support of Japan, he established the puppet government of Manchuria in the 3 northeastern provinces of China. Manchuria, just like Korea, was a Japanese colony during World War II. After the defeat of Japan in 1945, Pu Yi was captured by the Soviet Union. After the Second World War, the Soviet Union did not completely withdraw its troops from Manchuria. It was not until the Korean War that China agreed to act as a proxy of the Soviet Union and send troops to Korea. The Soviet Union finally returned Manchuria to China together with the last emperor. For the Soviet Union, from some point of view, the Soviet Union became a beneficiary in the Korean War. Although aid to North Korea and China spent some money, the proportion in the entire national economy was small. The Korean War allowed the Soviets to test several new forms of armament. Furthermore, numerous models of American military equipment were captured, which made it possible for Soviet Union engineers and scientists to reverse engineer the American technologies. According to the declassified Soviet documents released after the fall of the USSR, Stalin himself may have been the main obstacle for the peace in Korea, especially because of the intelligence gathered on the American war machine and the testing of the new Soviet military equipment during the conflict. Even when China and North Korea wanted a ceasefire, Stalin did not agree. In March 1953, Stalin died suddenly. Just 4 months later, the Korean Armistice Agreement was signed. For Japan, the situation in Japan after World War II was very bad. But the Korean War, which was a disaster for the Koreans, became the beginning of the Japanese recovery after the war. The Second World War severely damaged the Japanese social economy. The Korean War that broke out in June 1950 brought a major turning point for Japan. Japan, located in the east of Korea, became a military base and a supply of materials for the US. The munitions needs of the war directly promoted the Japanese economy. In 1955, the economy of Japan already recovered to its pre-war level. The Korean War not only brought economic benefits, but the political influence of the war also made Japan a major partner of the US in East Asia to restrain China and the Soviet Union, which was also one of the reasons that boosted the Japanese economy later. Unfortunately, the peaceful settlement mentioned in the armistice agreement never happened, and technically the war is ongoing. South Korea never signed the armistice agreement due to President Lee Soo-man's refusal to accept having failed to unify Korea by force. North Korea has announced that it will no longer abide by the armistice at least 6 times. In 1994, 1996, 2003, 2006, 2009, and 2013, China normalized relations and signed a peace treaty with South Korea in 1992. The US has never extended diplomatic recognition to North Korea. Or maybe, who knows?